I think too often, Christians, speaking about the second coming, the coming of Christ, they imagine it's actually going to be on a cloud, literally, Jesus is going to come, there's going to be lightning and all that. Well, which cloud? Over New York or over Moscow or Caracas? I mean, come on. The really important thing is this coming, inside us. The flash of lightning from one side of our mind and heart to the other. That's the important thing. Otherwise, the other one won't be any good anyway. It has to be that inner transformation. That is what's most important. And, this kind of awakening, this kind of presence to God can and should happen in every single simple, ordinary aspect of our everyday lives. You don't have to be waiting for some, apocalyptic thing at the end of the world, whenever that's going to be. What about right now, today? Are we having that flash of lightning in our heart and mind right while we're drinking our morning coffee? So the difference, eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage and buying and selling and, building and all that stuff, that's fine. But as you see, one gets taken and one is left out in the field or wherever it might be, because the same activities are done in different ways. And by the way, please, that's not a reference to the rapture. One is taken and one is left. That's an absurd, silly, ridiculous idea that came up only in the last, few decades, or the 19th century. It has no basis in tradition at all. What's being spoken about there is who is actually doing these simple daily tasks in the presence of God and for the kingdom of God and in union with God and for love of neighbor. You can't tell the difference from the outside. They seem to be doing the same thing, eating and drinking or plowing or whatever. But the real difference is what's going on in the heart. Really being present there. One is losing his life, her life, and saving it. The other is, trying to save it and losing it. Are you doing it for the kingdom of God? Are you doing it in the perspective? Are you always moving forward to ever greater depths of love and joy and peace and pardon and justice? That's what it means by, not looking back like Lot's wife, not going back down, always going forward. As Paul says to the Philippians, I don't think I've always already gotten there, but I stretch out. I forget what lies behind, and I stretch out myself to what lies ahead. Reverend Nissa based his whole theology, mystical theology, on that. He's stretching out to what lies before me. So this is the kind of attitude we have to have. You don't have to go up on a mountaintop and fast and pray. All we have to do is do what we're doing every day, but in the perspective of the kingdom of God, in the presence of God, with the Holy Spirit, with union with Christ, and that's the difference. That's the difference of how we live. And that's what's really faithful to the incarnation. The whole point of God sharing our humanity is so that in our very humanity, in his humanity, which becomes ours, we can share his divinity, right here and now. That, by the way, is the whole point of the first reading today, the second letter of John. He's speaking to the elect lady, which is one of the churches, and to her offspring, and saying, be careful of people who come along and don't confess Jesus Christ come in the flesh. Now, you may not realize, the very first most insidious temptation or heresy in the first community was called Docetism. God didn't really come in the flesh. I mean, come on, really? Flesh? Surely not. We got so used to Arianism in the 4th century and the fear that Jesus is not really God. Oh, Jesus is God, Jesus is God, Jesus is God. Well, the first community were concerned about, no, Jesus is man. Jesus is really human. Jesus reaches us and finds us and encounters us in our humanity, in our ordinary daily lives, in our bodies, in our activities. That's where Jesus is. That's where God is. Have we ever really believed that? And those who don't, and by the way, when it says those who are so progressive that they don't hold on to, what a tendentious translation. As other translations have, it simply says, whoever comes forward, that's like progressive, whoever comes forward and does not hold on to the teaching, that's all it says. So it's not progressive or conservative or liberal. It's simply, are you really finding Jesus in your humanity where he wants to find you, where he wants to be found, in his humanity? in our daily lives, eating and drinking and buying and selling and marrying and giving in marriage, but in the perspective of the kingdom of God, with a heart that's transformed by the love and peace and joy of his Spirit, living by his grace and in his presence. That's the challenge. That's the only second coming we really have to worry about, believe me.
Amen.